And this is the footage just into our newsroom again. You saw it live here on Daily Dose just 20 minutes ago. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a firm and warm handshake with the British Prime Minister Theresa May, and then in they go to 10 Downing Street. Brief photo op right there. This happened live just about 20 minutes ago. And again, this is marking the centennial, 100 years since the Balfour Declaration, a historic and much debated and analyzed 67-word document. That is it. That threw London's support behind the creation of a Jewish state, and its implications have been debated ever since. Again, in our studio, have Yigal Palmore, the former spokesperson for the Israeli Foreign Ministry. We'll talk with him in a second, but first, let's get started again in this segment with Jonathan Sacerdoti. Jonathan, this meeting is now underway. The British government is not calling this a celebration. They're saying they're marking the event with pride. They're not apologizing for the Balfour Declaration. They're proud of it. But obviously, they're very careful with their words. Even now, 100 years later, there is such weight attached to how you talk about this declaration.
Indeed, especially now 100 years later. And we heard Theresa May after they went through that door behind me and they had their little sit down for the journalists, both saying a few words. She mentioned that while this is a moment they're proud of, this 100th anniversary of their involvement in that way of the foundation of the State of Israel, she said that they are still very committed to a two-state solution. And the British government has said that this is a good opportunity to get things moving again in terms of a peace process. So that's obviously going to be part of their discussion, as is always the case when Israeli prime ministers meet British prime ministers. But as well as that, they both mentioned that they will be discussing the Iranian nuclear problem, Mr. Netanyahu mentioning it in some more detail than Mrs. May, and other areas of collaboration, including possible trade dealings after Brexit and making trade agreements between the two nations. Of course, Benjamin Netanyahu also pointing out that there is already such close collaboration between the two, not just in trade, but also in science and cybersecurity, mentioning, as he did, that Israel and Britain collaborating in that way has saved countless lives, both British and Israeli, and around the world.
What is the British view, just on the street, ordinary people, when they look back at that 67-word document from Lord Balfour, is it harkened back with pride, with nostalgia for the once mighty British Empire? Do they think of it more of a historical document, or do they understand its ramifications on the ground to this day in the Middle East?
I think the vast majority of the British public don't really have an opinion on the Balfour Declaration. This is a peculiarly Israeli celebration today. Obviously, the British government is showing that it is proud of the part it played, but ask the man on the street what they think of the Balfour Declaration, and they'll probably say, what is the Balfour Declaration? So the important thing about today is that while this is big news for Israel, Britain is welcoming the Israeli Prime Minister here. There are talks going on. There was that firm, warm handshake, as you saw, but that doesn't mean that the Balfour Declaration 100th anniversary is particularly big news for Britain, not in the way it is for Israel, at any rate.
All right, Jonathan, thanks so much for that report. Live outside 10 Downing Street, back in our studio with Yigal. We heard Jonathan say, relatively, this is a unique